Audubon 2456.
Welcome everybody to another wonderful episode here at State of the Save. Got a great episode for everybody today as we play part one of our discussion on Spec Ops The Line. With me as always is Michael. How you doing, Michael?
Well, my sense of reality is deteriorating and I don't know who to trust anymore, so there's that.
It seems like this is doing everything it's supposed to be doing.
Yeah, pretty much.
I am very excited about us discussing this game. This is one of the games that when we started doing this show, I would say was probably on the top 10 for me of games I wanted to do for this show. It's a game that if you have played it before and you mention Spec Ops The Line, it always draws some form of reaction from the person. But it's always up in the air whether people actually played it or not.
I'm picturing like glossy eyes, just camera slowly zooms onto a reactionary face and you just hear some of the moments from this game. Because, oh my, man.
It's just Vietnam flashbacks is all it is.
Basically.
A guest on the show at one point, Zach, me and him, when we first met each other, bonded over our mutual love of Spec Ops The Line on top of our love of the Doom franchise. But Spec Ops The Line it's a fascinating video game, and it's particularly fascinating to be playing it and discussing it in the year 2022. So I think it's going to be a fascinating conversation, especially since you haven't played it before. And it has been probably, 10 years, at least, if not more, since I've played this game. It's been a long time since I've played it, so it's been a while.
And we'll get into this when we get into the full discussion, but did you remember, I'm sure there are some major moments in this game that are just in this first half that I'm sure you'll never forget, but the beat-for-beat story, did you remember all of that too? Because it's been 10 years, as you said, since you played it.
I remember probably about 80% of what we've played so far. I remembered hardly anything about actually how it plays.
That makes sense.
Yeah. I don't remember hardly anything about the gameplay itself. I remember putting a lot of the beats for how the story goes. And if you were to ask me to describe the rest of this game, and of course I'm not going to do that because that's just me spoiling everything. I think I can remember a good 60 to 70% of how this goes from here.
Gotcha.
There's particular moments in this whole section that I remember when they took place. I could not remember how long it was before you got to them.
Gotcha.
I think I said this on the end of the last episode when we discussed this game as pre-talk. I was worried that we would not get to the kind of the start of the twist of this game and kind of let it show its cards a little bit in this first section. But I'm really, really glad that we do. We get just enough here to really show what makes this game unique compared to the games that were coming out alongside it at the time.
It's the perfect amount because it's got me enticed to want to go forward, but I also am at a point where I really want to discuss it. So this worked out great, lining up wise.
Yeah. You said before the show started that you have notes for chapters 1 through 6, and then you have chapters 7 and 8 and 9. It's a significant turn, that chapter 6, and that was where I was trying to remember when that took place. I had a fear that was going to be in the second half, and I was going to be like, there's not going to be a lot to talk about here if we don't get to that. But now that we have, we're in the thick of it, so there's going to be plenty to discuss here. It's going to be kind of a heavy show, heavy topics. So let's start a little bit light and talk about other video games that we've been messing around with. Mm-hmm. What you've been messing around with? What you've been playing?
Not a whole lot, actually. It's been a pretty busy week for me. So I'll just talk about something I've been playing in the background. My wonderful wife, for our anniversary, got me the expansion to Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak. It's more Monster Hunter Rise.
So,
And I'm very happy with that.
I mean, that's kind of what you want, though, right? I mean, yeah, it's not that comes across as a negative, but in reality, it's more of a good thing that I already like.
There is a giant crab monster that will stab you with his shell, so that's a fun time.
Hey, if giant crabs are in, the meme model of the year last year for GW was a giant crab. When they did models of the year voting, the crab got put in, even though the crab was just like a little bitty accent model. People were so obsessed with the crab that he made it to the finalists. I imagine there was some tipping the scales to make sure he would not win. But yeah, giant crabs. Big fan of giant crabs.
Crabs are cool. So this is basically every Monster Hunter game had a before world, had a second release of the game that had Master Rank, which was a remix version of all of the monsters. They would like play differently. Their armor sets would be different. They're much harder. They have like, I believe I said this, different move sets. But also thrown in are like new monsters in there. So since we're in the age of like DLC and like console expansions and everything, they don't need to make the full second release again. I think the last one they did that for was Generations and then Generations Ultimate on the 3DS and like the early part of the Switch. But when World came out, they made Iceborne, and they had editions that had both of those in there, but they were able to be like, we're just going to make it like a $40 DLC expansion that if you beat the game, you can move on to the next wave of content.
I think that's the way to do it. Fighting games have a long tradition of Street Fighter 2, Street Fighter Ultimate, Turbo, all yada 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 yada.
Hyper fighting,
hyper. Yeah, I'd much rather you just give me the option to just get the next group of content, because if you are a fan that's sticking with that franchise throughout its entire release, you're going to just already have those previous versions. Just let me buy it piecemeal as it comes out. A lot more convenient than owning 5 different versions of a game. Yeah, so I think that's the way to do it. But yeah, I mean, I'm glad that you're enjoying it. Like I said, it's more of the good things, so it's nothing to complain about.
Exactly.
I'm kind of in a similar boat. I've been playing weird things.
I like weird things. Go on.
So I played some more of the Castlevania collection of the Nintendo and Super Nintendo, the first release of that, where it had all the Nintendo games like 1, 2, 3, and all that stuff, and then Super Nintendo games. Fiddle around with that a little bit. This game made me go back and try to get into other cover-based shooter games. So I played Gears of War The Ultimate Collection of the first game, or the Ultimate Edition. Fiddle around with that for a little bit. Then got into Gears of War 5 again. Why, I don't understand how this happened, but I ended up here.
I've been thinking a lot about Gears of War lately. Just for some reason, I don't know why it happened.
It feels like this should be a year where there should be a Gears of War game coming out.
When was the last one? 2019?
2019, I believe.
Yeah.
If not, it's got to be 2019, I believe. Late 2019 is when I think that came out.
It's about time for another one of those, yeah.
Yeah, it feels like another one should come out. I don't hate 5. There was a lot of negativity around 5 from people who I don't quite understand, because I would like to say that 5 probably has the best campaign since like the original 3. But I've been playing some of the multiplayer in that. That's still a pretty good little multiplayer game. It's still very satisfying. The people who are playing it are either extremely good or extremely bad. There is no middle ground.
So I had a chance.
Yes. No, at first I was like, I am going to suck. And for some people, yes, I will. But some people have just stuck with this game and has never got any better. And you can just keep wiping the floor with those guys. It
was like me going to Street Fighter 4 online again a few weeks ago. I won online matches in a fighting game. I'm like, I don't know how this happened. It's not supposed to happen.
I've said it, I think, when I talked about the Gears of War Ultimate Edition on the last time that I was fiddling around with that, where you go back and you use strategies that were valid a few years ago that aren't being used, and the fact that you are doing something that's outside of the meta of the game just breaks some people. Like you pull out the Lancer in that game, and it's like, oh, fools just don't know how to handle that. But 5 is interesting. It's not a bad game at all. It's not a game I think is super kept its community very well. I get into a lot of games where I have bots. Like, because the game auto-fills your teams with bots as players drop in and out. So there'll be times where maybe a team will be 2 to 3 bots on that team. And then they'll fill, but I don't know if that's just a server thing or if that's just a amount of traffic the game is getting. I would be interested to look at those numbers.
I think it might be like a situation where everybody who still loves and plays Gears has their Gears that they want to play online. Like, the people who like Gears 1 and like the Classic 3 are probably playing Ultimate Edition. But the people who put a lot of money into Gears 4 are probably still playing Gears 4. The people who have Game Pass who like Gears are probably playing Gears 5. So you probably have 3 active Gears communities who are isolated and don't communicate with each other.
There's a 5 is a different playing game than having played the original and the Ultimate version and playing 5. They are very, very different feeling games. You going back and playing that first game, I forgot how rudimentary that cover system is and some of the movement. It was so revolutionary at the time for me. Like, I remember playing that game the week it came out and thinking, like, this is amazing. Like, this is the crispest, game I've ever played, and I'm moving around the environment in such a, smooth way. But going back to it after many, many games of kind of refinement, it's not as crisp as I remembered it to be. But 5, it's still a damn good video game. Also, like I said, there is no in between. I run into people who I cannot touch, and I run into people who cannot touch me. So it makes me feel good to be in the middle of the pack still.
Can I still play as Dave Bautista?
Yes.
Okay.
And you can also
buy
play.
him, or is he just an unlocked skin?
I think if you don't have him now, you might not have him.
Oh, no.
Now, I have Dave Bautista because if I remember correctly, we were at 2019's Clash of Champions when they advertised that if you went home that night, you could get Dave Bautista. And I went home that night. I went home that night after we watched that show live and proceeded to get Dave Bautista. And I don't know if you didn't do that, you might not have Dave Bautista. Because I play as Dave Bautista in Guild War 5. Because that's the best way to do it.
I think I looked at it, saw a 95 gigabyte install, and went, no.
You can play as the members of the New Day in that game.
Okay.
I don't have them unlocked, and I don't know if you can get them anymore, but they are in there.
The crossover system of that we've reached in online gaming is insane. Between your Fortnites, your Multiverses, your Gears 5s, everything is bonkers.
Nobody touches.
Smash open the floodgates, and now everything's crazy.
Nobody's touching Epic right now. I mean, Epic's the Goku and Vegeta stuff that's happening right now has made me even say to myself, maybe I should go download the Fortnite and go play as Vegeta. But
you can play as Captain America and do a Kamehameha on some fools.
It's very, very exciting.
Which is pretty good, I'm not gonna lie. But I'm how much money will I need to put down to get the combination of random stuff I want?
That's the problem.
Yeah.
If I could just come in there and be like, allow me to buy Vegeta and be able to run around and play as Vegeta, I would be okay. But instead, it's all random shop purchases and bullshit like that, and I ain't doing that shit.
They had the Ornithopters, the bug helicopters from Dune in there when that movie came out. I wonder if those things are still there.
Darth Vader's still in there. I saw a TikTok today of a guy Kamehameha and Darth Vader.
The trailer showed people in the creative zone of people just hanging out watching Dragon Ball Z in their official trailer. I'm like, isn't whoever owns the Dragon Ball license, Toei Entertainment, I think? They're very notoriously stingy with their licensing. So the fact that you can just watch episodes of Dragon Ball in Fortnite is crazy.
I don't know if that's the way I would like to watch episodes of Dragon Ball, but I'm glad that it exists, that you can. I am, yeah, it's a, like, no one touches them. Gears of War 5 has the weirdest crossovers because it is the New Day and Dave Bautista. And
Terminator.
then it is the Terminator, like a very shitty Terminator movie where it's like crappy Sarah Connor, like old Sarah Connor, and a crappy looking Terminator, and so it's not all hits over there.
As a kid, I was obsessed with Terminator and would create him and put him in a whole bunch of games, mostly like N64 and PlayStation 2 wrestling games. So the fact that like Terminator's in a whole bunch of stuff now, like he made a comeback in like Mortal Kombat 11, I main the Terminator.
Well, and I will say this: that it's not the Terminator as Arnold. It is just a T. It's not even a T-1000 or whatever. It's like a
T-800.
Yeah, I think maybe it is a T-800. It just doesn't look like the classic design. It's a little bit more bulky.
I mean, you need to be for Gears
design.
of War. If he was skinny, he would have a smaller hitbox.
That was always the Carmine thing in Gears of War 1. Everybody played as Carmine because there was an obsession with the fact that he was slightly smaller than everybody else. Except me, who was playing as the Coltrane, because fuck your Carmines. No, but yeah, it's just a weird spot. In a non-video gaming news, I got together and me and Nick were playing some Kill Team, Warhammer 40k Kill Team, last night. Bad day for me. My veteran guardsman lost in the fourth round to his assault intercessors, or his intercessor squad. Did not go well for me. We went down fighting, but we were overwhelmed. But after we had played that, I was talking about how there's a ton of video games coming that I'm extremely excited about. But I'm having a hard time with something right this second. Like I can tell you like 5 or 10 games in the next few months that I'm like, okay, well, I'm pumped. But just this second, I'm in a little bit of a lull. And it's really kind of bumming me out. So I was kind of looking, I was like, I need to find something. And I think what I'm going to give a shot is that Cult of the Lamb from
I looked
Devolver
into
Digital.
it, yeah. I was thinking about that. I had some
yeah.
gift... Actually, today, I had some gift card money laying around. I'm going to be on a plane soon. So, of course, whenever you get on a plane, you're like, I need a plane Switch game. I looked up reviews for Cult of the Lamb, and they're like, this game is great. Do not play it on Switch. There's a lot of... It runs at half the frame rate some of the time. There's a lot of stuttering. So I instead put that money towards Neon White. I haven't played it yet, but I'm really excited to check that out. But
I think Neon White would be that's going to be a good game that's a good playing game. You want something that you can jump in and out of pretty easy for a playing game, especially if you're like sitting in the terminal with the board. You need to be able to hop out real fast and go jump on the plane, and then you put it away when it's time to land and all that stuff.
Exactly.
Cult of the Lamb seems like it would be a good Switch game, but I hate to hear about the performance issues there. But yeah, I was looking at that. We were talking about that. That might be a holdover game until some of these releases are coming. Because, like I said, there's good stuff coming. I mean, I've been, just looking at stuff down the pipeline here. And I'm like, it's got good stuff coming. It's just, I got to get to it.
Everything I'm excited for got delayed to 2023. So I'm going to be broke in 2023, but I'm doing okay now.
Yeah, we were talking about that. Like, Dark Tide got pushed to October.
That's still coming out this year. Okay.
I think it's still coming out. As far as I know, it's coming out now in October. I'm very excited for Street Fighter. Everything they're showing off with Street Fighter looks amazing. Gonna probably be a good release. But yeah, good things are coming up soon. I just can't wait for them to get here, and it's just looking for things to play while we're waiting for those games. So let's talk about a video game that we have been playing. Let's go ahead and jump in here before the internet Discord gods smite us again, and talk about this Spec Ops The Line. One thing that fascinates me about this game is that it does do a good job at the beginning of hiding that it hides behind the very classic, at the time, pro rah military shooters that were coming out at this time. There was a lot of like SOCOM 4 and the Ghost Recon franchise, which was very good at the time. I believe this was around the time of Advanced Warfighter. So all those, I think, I want to say those two were coming out around this time, which were good games, don't get me wrong. But there was a lot of rah, military games all about taking down the bad guys, and war is,
one-man army, glorifying conflict, stuff like that.
There was straight up the start of like the Arma franchise, where the U.S. military was straight up doing video games as recruiting tactics.
Oh, that's not Arma. That's America's Army.
Oh yeah, that is okay. America's Army, whatever. It's same kind of vibe.
I'm usually not quick to jump on the correction, but that's a very specific thing.
Yeah, Arma is now not even a tactical shooter anymore. It's just a spot where you could do crazy mods. But yes, you are correct. Not Arma, the American Army releases, which were straight up funded by the United States military. It was a weird time in military shooters at the time, and then Spec Ops The Line shows up, coming out of a franchise of Spec Ops games that were not exactly like S-tier games. They were not, games that were setting the world on fire.
They were a game everyone rented once for the PlayStation.
Yeah, they were passable. They were passable video games, but not something that was like setting the world on fire. And then Spec Ops The Line comes out, which at the time I had no like high expectations for the game. I was aware of its release, but it was not something that I was like counting down the days till. And so I think the reason why I even gave it a shot is I want to say early reviews came out around the time of release, and everyone was like, this thing's a lot more to it than anybody kind of saw coming. I remember
because you can't. This is a very difficult game to market because we talked about it last time, but it was marketed at the Spike TV Gaming Awards, of all places. Which
not exactly.
Which at that time, that wasn't the Game Awards have kind of. If you watch it like nowadays, it's a completely different show. But then when it was on Spike TV, which was very much a Spike TV venture, that.
Oh yeah, Spike TV. The Spike TV awards were like, here's the cast of Fast and Furious to announce top 10 raddest game moment of the year, sponsored by Mountain Dew Baja Blast. It was a Spike TV joint, and you had good trailers come out because Keeley has always been the master of grabbing himself exclusives. But it was mostly kind of embarrassing to watch. And it was one of those things that, this did not fit at all with the messages of, that show. Like, you can't really get across what this game's going to be on the Spike TV Awards.
And it's almost a Metal Gear Solid 2 situation where if you show too much, it'll ruin the whole, like, swerve of the experience.
It'll also ruin the entire purpose of this game, which is the descent into madness. Like the whole purpose of this is to have people, going crazy, and the fall of all of these, these guys' sanities, basically. And you can't really do that if you're if you're showing it from the get-go. If you're showing it from the get-go that this is what this story is about, you're not going to show that slow descent. It has to start off in a very clean cut place and then slowly break everything down and start deconstructing this kind of game. And also it falls in line with like Heart of Darkness and Apocalypse Now and those kind of it's directly influenced by, all the Heart of Darkness and then Apocalypse Now. And so it's got to kind of start off in a clean-cut place to do the descent. And we talked about that. I was nervous that we were going to not get to the beginning of that fall in this first section, but we got just enough to start the ball rolling here.
Enough to have me going, what can we do next? Because I feel like the peak that we ended on in terms of, oh my god, what moments? I don't know how we can go further than that.
Oh, things are going to happen.
I know.
I
thought things that I knew about, I thought were in-game things. Basically, how I thought this game would go. This is what I expected the game to be, but not how I expected the game to be. Knowing what Spec Ops The Line is in the context of like the greater like storytelling in video games, like conversation, and what I picked up from like gaming podcasts and videos over the years about Spec Ops The Line. So I knew of a couple scenes going in, one of which near the end of this we definitely got to.
I mean,
but I
would say the water cooler moment we get with the white phosphorus scene, or the use of white phosphorus. That's like the That's the water cooler moment that starts to kind of say, hey, you're going to have a different kind of story here than what you thought you were getting. And I think that's something it's worth talking about as we start to break down this game over the course of these first 9 chapters, is that has to take place fairly early on, because where this is going to end up, you can't have like a one chapter kind of swerve in this game. It needs to be just a march into depression. It needs to be a destructive force that you see coming from a mile away, and there's so much outside forces all taking place here. There's nothing you can do with it. It sweeps you up, because that's kind of the message, right? That in war and things like that, you get swept up in all of these outside powerful forces, and you end up a place that you never thought you were going to be. You started off with this goal, but all these outside things take you along with the ride. And when you wake up and you realize what you've become something that you never set out to be. And that's kind of the message of this game. I mean, that's not a spoiler at all. That's what will be shown.
And it does everything that I love when it comes to like stories evolving in games. Like even from like the start screen, the music, the loading screens and everything, they all are within the tone of the game from those shifts. They all get darker and more in line with the overall story of the game as you go forward. It's not like there's no dissonance going on between the gameplay and like the presentation of the game. It's all in service of the story. And I think up front, what we need to talk about is how everything is in service of the story except and changes and evolves over time, except the gameplay. The actual gameplay itself is very standard cover third-person shooter affair. No more, no less. It is the most baseline, perfectly serviceable third-person shooter you can think of.
There is a lot. The combat is, like from a gameplay point of view, it's very much pop and shoot. They play around with some environmental stuff, like
the environmental stuff is like
shooting sand.
Highlight the back of the box highlight. Highlight reel is
use
like destructible environments. Oh, the destructible environments are the highlight here when it comes to the combat.
I would make the argument that the combat is not bad.
It's not bad. No, it's not. It's
environments get tore up.
Perfectly serviceable. It does its job.
Yeah, it's just weird. It's even weird to have a long conversation about the combat, because
it's not why we're here.
Yeah, but it does have a purpose, and there's something I want to bring up around chapter 7 when we get there, of how the tone of how Walker and his team changed the way they talk around chapter 7. If you listen to their call outs and how they're speaking and how they're the general fluff that you get in shooters of yo, I got one, or whatever, this, that, and the other. It starts off very professional, but come 7 and 8, it's like I got that fucking son of a bitch, and it was like everything's raw and nothing's about getting them. It's just fucking it's all bickering, it's all hostile towards each other. And you start to kind of pick up that even in the call outs, which is a very subtle nod to like how things are descending.
There's a specific moment where the trust of the team completely falls apart.
Yeah.
And I don't think it'll be put back together. I don't see how anything happy can come out of this story in the end.
Well, and
this is a lot, man.
Heart of Darkness is worth reading, but I think more people are probably familiar with like Apocalypse Now, because it's like the film, it's a movie compared to a book kind of situation. But if have you seen the movie Apocalypse Now?
Yeah, I was hoping you wouldn't single me out. Dang it!
This story is. Yeah. It's a play off of those, to the point of the Colonel character that is the factor that starts off the mission, right? Like, but there was this weird feeling at the beginning of that, both the film, I'll use the film compared to the book, that from the get-go things are not going to be going well. Like, there's just this unsettledness to the start of it. So let's kind of, as we get into the game here, start kind of breaking things down. I very much enjoy, there's going to be a lot of direct references to those other things. I'm going to try not to be like,
okay,
I'm not going to do that but I'm just going to say it from the get-go. A lot of this is not 100% original. They are pulling directly from source materials. And that's fine, because they're setting it in a different location. They do different things with it than are going to happen in films like Apocalypse Now and stuff like that. But a lot of this is straight up pulled from that. Like, I mean, if you go off today and watch Apocalypse Now, that the mission is to go upriver to find a colonel that has gone off grid. We are going into Dubai to find a colonel who has gone off grid. Like, some of this is 100% pulled from those source materials.
But they adapt that style story to a more interactive medium and use that so far to play with to not only just play with like expectations of like what we expect from military shooters, but what we expect from like game stories as a whole, and putting those elements in here makes like a wholly unique experience because of the way you're interacting with it.
Exactly. Starting as we start talking about this game, one of the things that I will say is negative of this game, it starts off with something that kind of undercuts that slow march into the downhill with the mid-game cut of an on-rails helicopter sequence, which is not particularly good. I have a real hard time that they use.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I think this does like set the pace of the game, because they are trying to make you think that it's going to be something. How many games start out with a turret sequence? At the top of my head, I'm like, I think one of the Gears games starts with something like that. There is Ace Combat Assault Horizon starts with that. So I think they're trying to lure you in with a false sense of security, going, "Oh, I know what this type of game is." It's trying to make the player feel comfortable in a situation.
That was a very interesting point you just made, because me, as somebody who knows where this is going, I was like, man, that really undercuts this. Like, it undercuts the story of this slow descent into madness. But you're right, from a first-time player's point of view, it's giving you all the signs of one of these, at the time, very generic, rah-rah military shooters, where it's like, here's a cool, adrenaline-filled turret sequence. God knows video games at the time loved turret sequences. So yeah, you're right. That actually plays really well for a first-time player, because it's like, this is what this game's going to be like. And then
even like action sequences in this bit are pumped with like the bit where you're storming the like crashed wreckage, there's rock music blasting, which gives a sense of like almost heroism.
Oh yeah,
here.
yeah. Walker and his team, who is our main character, by the way, Captain Walker. Or we get our debriefing of this entire operation, that Walker is being sent in after a man named John Conrad.
Yes.
Who leads the 33rd into a form of a unit that was pulled out of the Afghanistan, I believe. I believe it's out of Afghanistan.
Yeah,
to go into Dubai.
There was a massive sandstorm in Dubai that wiped out that entire massive city.
Basically, they were sent in to help evacuate the city before that sandstorm hit. And it's an ongoing problem because this is taking place 6 months before we arrive into Dubai. Basically, storms and stuff have shut the city off, so there's no good access to the city. And the 33rd were ordered to pull out before this happened. They never did pull out. And so you're being sent in basically as a reconnaissance mission to see, the belief is the city was wiped out by the storms, and just trying to find Conrad and to try to find what happened to the 33rd and theoretically bring in evacuation units and things like that to get access to them. Walker has a direct relationship to the colonel, as the colonel had directly saved his life back in Afghanistan. So Walker's kind of got the vested interest of knowing this man in some way and having a interest in trying to go help him and kind of go find him. So he is leading a Delta Force squad to go in and do this reconnaissance mission.
All this is set during like the opening credits, as we us and our crew, as they make like quippy jokes back and forth with each other.
Oh, you have the whole. Yeah, you have the Joker guy. You have the
like
tough
Michael
guy.
Pena's character in any war movie that he's in.
Fury, like he is in Fury. If you've seen the movie
Fury, and 12 Strong as well. He's more the jokey character in that.
You have the jokey guy. Like you have the cool tough guy. You have Walker, who's the like stoic military commander. It plays all the tropes. And even
he's voiced by Walker is voiced by Nolan North, which is another sense of familiarity. Like, oh, it's a Nolan North led action game. So
yeah, he's your generic heroic guy. And he's even, like I said, he's voiced as it. And his mission is a heroic mission. Like, it fits into, like, he's going to rescue, these guys who were stuck behind this sand wall for 6 months. It fits very generic.
There's no moral ambiguity here. It's our guys went missing. We need to go find them and bring them back home and bring any civilians we find, we bring them home too. It's very clear cut. Until it's not.
Yeah, and it also sets up the 33rd and Conrad as heroic, because we're told at the beginning that he's a hero who saved our main character's life. He's kind of a living legend kind of guy. The 33rd is a very well respected division. Their refusal to abandon the city, it straight up uses terminology like abandon and stuff like that. Like they're gonna stay and they're gonna try to keep this city safe. So it sets it up as this very heroic mission that we're going on to rescue a bunch of heroic people. And that's a really, really smart with the way we see things going to be playing out here, because we're set up in this very generic rah-rah moment that we can kind of instantly start undercutting slowly but surely. And they even do a really good job in this first chapter, because while we arrive in Dubai, and one thing I want to say also is this game still looks really, really good.
Yeah, especially the sand effects and the lighting is still really great. And even like the helicopter sequence at the beginning, because it does one of my favorite things that you do in any game, where the start screen turns into is the first shot of the game itself, and like that looks good. All the destruction effects at the beginning with the exploding helicopters and everything still look fantastic. The shattering glass and the sand like falling. So yeah, this game does incredible stuff with sand.
Oh yeah, the sand looks great. There's a sequence in that opening sequence where a helicopter is very very close to you, and then it hits a guardrail rail coming off of a building. I think it's a crane, actually a crane, and it's so close, and the crane comes so like out of frame so quickly that it's almost kind of like a jump scare almost because the helicopter slams into it going full speed. This whole sequence when you intro Dubai, you're coming over the dunes through the desert, and the cities, you can tell that there was just mass sand built up all over the place on the highways and into the city itself, and it really sets the tone from there's a line that the game will use later on in the game in which you're told straight up, welcome to Dubai, gentlemen.
Welcome to Dubai.
And but you have that vibe of you are walking into a place that will change you forever, and you don't even know it yet.
Yeah, and even as you're walking forward, your username, your gamer tag, is in the opening credits and featuring special guests, showing that, oh, you're going to be part of this story whether you like it or not. Like, you're involved here.
Well, it shows that we're playing you just as much as the characters.
Any game that gives off, any game that has me thinking of, like, my connection to, like, Metal Gear Solid 2 instantly is like, alright, cool.
Well, even here, while you're coming over the dunes onto the highway, they very very intentionally hide the interactions that you're going to be having with the 33rd and Conrad's units, because the first people you encounter are straight up labeled as insurgents. And, you think about this is peak Iraq-Afghan war time. We're all very aware of what that term is. So you're fighting what was an enemy in like a million video games at the time. You're fighting these guys who are labeled as insurgents, who are killing American soldiers. You're rescuing guys who are part of the 33rd. It's keeping up that illusion that this is going to be a generic story about American heroism and this, that, and the other. And it does a wonderful job of playing that for that whole first chapter until you basically get into Dubai itself. Like, all on the roads there, that you're not fighting anybody in the 33rd. You're fighting to get them. You're still on. It's a rescue mission still. And it's that very cool subtlety that they play it with that comes across very well. And we're not going to talk a lot on combat in this because we've already kind of went through that.
What's there to say?
But it's a lot of popping shot. Like, I'm not going to go beat by beat on any of this. It's very good. I think the combat's enjoyable, but it's we're going to kind of keep with the story point of view here. This whole part, it has to be here. It has to set the groundwork, but things don't really, I think, kick off for this game until you hit chapter 2, in which you are introduced to the voice on the radio, and you go into the radio station. And it's when you're starting to recognize that there is what you believe to be at first elements of the 33rd who are acting outside of what your normal parameters are, and there's that slow realization of like, well, maybe it's a couple of bad apples. Maybe we're dealing with something here, like, this is not the whole thing. Maybe there's just some bad apples here. There's some of these guys are going off track, and it kind of continues to hide that knife for at least a couple more chapters before you actually get the reveal that no, the problem is not, you're not going to be fighting generic insurgents here in Dubai. The people you came here to rescue are the people committing these atrocities, and we're going to start descending into that.
Like, right away, I have a note here. They says they keep talking about saving the 33rd, but that message from the DJ made it sound like we're killing the 33rd. And then this is just a point of where, like, wait, something's wrong here. And even, like, all the intel you grab hinted something at much darker stuff, too. Like, some of the intel here suggests the evacuation force was, like, a made-up story.
There's a lot of conversation, like, you get some intel about the radio man, who is a journalist that was attached to the unit while they were in Afghanistan. And well, just a couple of things about gameplay point of view I want to talk about too. When you enter like the radio station, the use of sound is very, very good. Like fighting into the radio station and the music playing and the yelling of the team as the team is having to, communicate. They raised, like, even the regular dialogue is all raised. Everything's like yelling to hear each other over the music. The use of a guy on the radio is such a video game trope. And you're right, they do a good job of like acting like he never mentions that he's a voice of the 33rd. He's mentioning like he's a rogue faction, and maybe the 33rd ran into some crazy unit that's killing them, and that's who we get. That's the real enemy. And continues to try to bury the reveal that the crimes that we're about to start seeing taking place, because we're seeing bits and pieces, but nothing, concrete are being committed by Conrad's, division. You're just kind of getting, well, maybe there's some outside force that we got to deal with, and the denial.
Yeah, and that's Martin's theory. Martin always, at least for a good portion of this section, he's an optimist. He really is, because he is like, it starts out, we're going to get these guys out, or, this is just like a rogue faction, they must have like split off somehow. The CIA's here. That's going to clear up this whole thing. Don't worry about it, guys. And like, it's going to be okay.
Well, exactly. You run into the CIA, and there's also like a very lack of interest in like trusting the CIA. Like instantly the Delta team starts to kind of like, you run into what is the name of the CIA operator that you run into? Do we ever get a name?
The first one, or Gold, is the one near the end of this section that we're trying.
This would be the first one.
I don't know if we get a name for
him.
I
don't know if we get one. But we run into him, and he's interacting with who we've been, the whole time been referring to as insurgents. So we're like, well, maybe this is a rogue CIA, op. And, Delta's kind of like referring to, of course, it's the CIA. We are... we're going to be talking about this. I know we have international listeners, but we're going to be looking at this from a very American point of view here. You're a lot more likely to trust that the CIA is doing shady stuff than you'll be like, yeah, of course, CIA is the bad guys. They're always doing.
Not our boots on the ground, everyman.
Yeah, not our guys. But the CIA, we know those guys always do shady stuff, and and Walker and them refer to it like that, right? They'll instantly not trusting the CIA operation. They find his like base of operations, and like, what are the CIA doing here? Like they'll instantly blaming the CIA for things going bad. But like I said, it makes sense, And from another video game point of view, you would maybe believe that. You're like, okay, maybe the bad guys are some like rogue CIA unit. And instead, the realization kind of kicks in here. I believe it's in chapter 3 when we get into the bank. Is when we get the straight up reveal of the 33rd executing a CIA op. We have a sequence in which the CIA is interrogating a member of the 33rd,
but we see him,
who's actually the guy we are.
But
here
we
to
see him
find.
before, and that's a whole big deal too, because the leader of the insurgents, we find out, one of your teammates goes, "That's an American." So you think, it's this one guy who took these insurgents who didn't want like Americans here, and was just led a charge. So it's just this one guy that's causing this problem, right? And
it's a rogue CIA.
So one
agent
of his
is what we're
I think
being
it's
told.
the same guy, because he has an intel that line really stuck to me. He says, in Dubai, these hostages are using silver to kill soldiers. I guess that makes us monsters. I want to say that's his vocal log there.
I think it might be. Yes, I don't have that written down, but you're right. We do see that like the insurgents are being led by one CIA guy, so you can be like, well, maybe he's the bad guy of the game. And the whole driving force of us entering Dubai here is that we were told that they had captured an American soldier, like one of the guys on the road that we tried to rescue, who was being executed by these insurgents. I use that in quotation marks. We're there to rescue this guy. And when we finally find him through the course of events, he successfully disarms and kills the CIA agent. And I don't know how you played this, but there's a sequence in which he's backing up. He doesn't trust you. You don't know what to think of him. You're trying to talk him down, and I let him leave.
Yeah, same.
Like, I didn't shoot him or anything. And when you go and you descend down behind him is when you're first time you're actually attacked by members of the 33rd, where he straight up goes up there. It's like, oh, there's more CIA guys. He thinks you're probably CIA. So you, at this point, you can kind of still in your head chalk this all up as a big misunderstanding. And it's not until as you're leaving this building do you see that the 33rd is out there executing people and straight up rounding up this entire civilian population that's been kind of hiding out here in this bank. And that's your first, like, major proof that the force here, this 33rd, has gone off reservation. Like, they've gone, and but what I like about it is, if you want to try to play devil's advocate, and Walker does
a lot to try to rationalize
you can still try
all the
to
stuff
find,
going on. He's always like, well, we don't know the whole story. It has to be this, right?
You can do that. Like, if you really wanted to play devil's advocate here, you could be like, well, maybe they're rounding all these people up because it's not a safe place for them, and they're trying to get them out. Maybe this is a misunderstanding. Maybe there is a rogue CIA element here. They are assuming that we are a part of that CIA element, so that's why they're attacking us. And so you can kind of do the mental gymnastics through all of this to keep yourself from believing what the evidence is starting to push, which is that no, these crimes that you're hearing about and you're starting to see evidence of are being committed by the 33rd. Like, the unit we're here to rescue is doing this. But it does a great job of playing into that whole, well, it can't be us. And like I said, I'm not going to harp super heavy on this, but it's very interesting that this is coming out in a time in which there was a lot of discussions about things that was being declassified or stories that were coming back out after the Iraq-Afghan war, where there was a rah-rah period, in our country where the war happens and we are, not hearing about some of these things, and then we're starting to hear about, like, the black site prisons and war crimes and things like that, atrocities that are happening. And you can kind of see people in the real world doing a lot of the mental gymnastics like Walker's doing here, of pretending like, well, clearly there's got to be more information, we just don't know. Yeah, it all looks bad, but just trust it, it'll be okay, we're the good guys here, and doing those mental gymnastics. So it's a very interesting connection there, that Walker's kind of playing that role of, well, we don't know the whole story. Yeah, it looks bad, but I'm sure it's not.
There's also the moment.
We'll get to Conrad.
There's also the moment here where I think the game makes like a bigger turn. In general, is where I put, you find your way to the hostage who kills who I thought was going to be the main villain, the guy leading who we think is the insurgent. He's killed off, like, not even 10 minutes after meeting him. And in every other game, every other military game at this time, he would be the main villain. And we'd be like, oh, it's so deep that the American is the bad guy in this. Look how dark this is. And, like, this game just takes it 20 already. It takes it 20 steps further than just that one bit. That would be shocking.
It's not, that would be shocking shady
in a lesser game. But it just,
well, games have done that, though, even at this time. Like games like Far Cry 2, where it's a American behind the jackal guy you're hunting down in Far Cry 2 is an American, I believe. Like, yeah, games have done that, though, but it's always like with the shady CIA guys. Even like Metal Gear and stuff like that, it's always been like the shady, like, secret agent guys are. Yeah, but here the realization that it's not the shady CIA guys, it's the run-of-the-mill boots on the ground that are committing these atrocities, and this heroic American figure Conrad, who we are being told is a beacon of what American colonel should be, is aware of it. And at this point, Walker instantly jumps to the belief that Conrad doesn't know about it, or something's happened to him, or these guys have gone rogue. Like, the concept that Conrad is endorsing this behavior has not touched Walker's mind. And Walker's the only one who has a direct connection with him, because the other two members of the team are, they don't have the direct connection to Conrad that Walker does. So there's a lot of them like being like, things are looking bad here, man. And Walker are like, no, it's not what it is. We'll get with Conrad. We'll find Conrad, and we'll figure this out. And there's a lot of stuff where they're like, we should maybe leave, go get that evac, and come back and figure this. No, Conrad's going to know what's going on. We'll get with Conrad. And it's really, it's better. It's done better than it has any right to be. Because the lesser game would have had the reveal happen, and it would have been done in like a cutscene. Here, this is slow burn, and we're not doing it justice because we're kind of flying through this because we have to. But it's a slow burn, of that realization that, oh, well, maybe we're here to fight insurgents. Maybe we're here to fight the CIA, Black Ops.
No.
Evil guys. Maybe this is a rogue element. And then the realization that, no, the 33rd has gone off reservation and are straight up committing atrocities.
Yeah. And,
and the members of...
And this is the point in the game where you're fighting American soldiers for the rest of this thing. And let me tell you...
That's something I wanted to hide. I didn't want to talk to you about.
I knew about it, but I knew that was going to happen. Because there are like 3 specific moments that I know happen in this game. And I thought they would all happen at the end, but we've already hit 2 of them. I can talk about them openly here. But the fact that the enemies become American soldiers and that becomes like the main conflict of the game. 2, the famous or infamous white phosphorus scene. And a third one we'll talk about later that I know happens. But that's it. And the fact that we already hit 2 of them when I thought all 3 were going to be in the back half is... I want to say super exciting, but that's not really the word I would use. More like anxiety-inducing.
There is never that I can think of. Like, we have like fault in video games, like American soldiers and stuff like that in video games, but they are always given an out. You're fighting a rogue, evil unit that's corrupted by some crazy, foreign, spy or something. And it's never played like it is here, where these are extremely recognizable American soldiers. The game is fairly brutal. Like, there was explosions of heads. There's a lot of times enemies don't die outright. There's a
brutal execution move that you can do. Like,
there's an
There's also elements of, like, when you're in combat, there was one early on where I saw a enemy soldier trying to patch up his own man. And you can just shoot them both. And it always asks the question, like,
and it's not...
It doesn't feel good.
Well, and it's not even played in, like, a big dramatic moment. Like, I'll tell you right up from the get-go, in the initial scene in the bank here, when they're rounding up the civilians, I got into the initial firefight on one of the upper floors, and I'm moving through one of the alleyways, and a civilian books it into the screen.
I think
And I shot him.
Yeah, same.
Because the game hadn't, at that point, given me any civilians to worry about shooting. And so someone just booked it around a corner towards me in the middle of a firefight, and I shot her. And the game doesn't do a big dramatic moment. It doesn't.
None of your
Walker doesn't say anything.
Scream out, "What have you done?" or anything.
You just keep.
It's just something you have to live with, and it's something that doesn't even register to me right away. You're like, wait, that didn't sit right. Then you look and go, oh no, I did that.
A lesser video game would have been like, you fucked up, you shot your own guy, you shot a civilian, no, no, no. Here, the fact that it doesn't address that, and to be honest with you, I feel like it's almost set up to make you accidentally shoot them.
Oh, for sure.
It's so sudden.
It's in the middle of a long,
if you don't
like,
do
10-minute firefight at that point.
Yeah, and it's a single person.
Mm-hmm.
You don't run into them again. The fact that it doesn't address it is what makes it so powerful. And it's still fairly early on, but it's this concept that things are so fucked that we just shot a civilian, and that's not even registering. But also, it's this concept that, well, that's one death in a firefight. I can justify that in my head. But what's going to happen when later events take place? Can you justify those away? And you see the mental gymnastics start kicking in. Walker's, I want people to focus a lot on Walker, because for a character that is basically set up from the get-go to be a generic character that you shouldn't care about, there's a lot more that they do with him than you would anticipate.
Yeah, for sure.
And he's got a lot of a range here.
Even as this is all going on, he's always making theories about what's going on. And after this huge firefight with the American soldiers, he starts to speculate, okay, the 33rd obviously tore itself into two factions, and the CIA was then sent to cover them up. He sounds like almost conspiracy theory, trying to rationalize all this terrible things that's happening.
It's just bad apples, guys.
Yeah. But then
it's just bad apples.
Then you get out.
It's clearly not the whole system.
Then you get out after the tense shooting out the window sequence, and then you see the most hauntingly beautiful shot in this game. That's the famous Dubai skyline, and it's all halfway buried in sand. It's an incredible shot.
The environmental disaster as a backdrop is a lot more interesting to me than if this was a war.
Yes.
This is an environmental disaster. You could have very easily swapped this location for an American city hit by a hurricane or a wire fire or something like that. And that makes it more disturbing. The concept that everything that's happened is based around a natural disaster, and that's what's led to this. I think if this game was released today, maybe we would lean a little bit more into the natural disaster side of things too here. But and I do want to vaguely quickly talk about some gameplay stuff. The stuff they do with visibility in this game is so great, with the storms that come in throughout the game, the destructive power of the storms that rip sides of the buildings off, break the glass, lowers visibility. There's just some amazing sequences in that side of things that I really, really love. The sand technology, when you throw fragmentation grenades into the sand, and when they go off, it sends so much sand up in the air, it lowers visibility.
Every grenade is a smoke grenade.
Yeah, because it's kicking up so much particles that you can move through it as almost like a cover mechanic almost. It's fascinating.
And the sand has so much has a weight to it too. A little bit of sand will just knock a guy over, but a lot of sand will kill somebody. And there's a set there's a set rule to it, which makes it feel
makes you
respect the sands. Don't
exactly.
This is a pro sand podcast.
But that's what it does though. It makes you respect it. When those windows go out and sand starts pouring in, you gotta respect it, because it's just as deadly as the guys with the guns. There's a lot of cool sequences in which you're shooting out windows and guys are falling through from the ceiling.
Yes.
Destructibility in this game is very, very good. Like I said, gameplay wise, it's not a slouch. It's doing some really, really interesting stuff. And there's always the weird distance between some games where you're playing as a very emotional game, and then you have sequences in which you kill hundreds of people. Is it perfect? No, but I think it does a good job here of trying to show that descent again,
Yeah.
right? Because did you have any feelings, while you were shooting generic insurgents in quotation marks? But now that they're Americans, are you feeling a little bit different because you're shooting the same number of them, and they sound just like you, and they look just like you, and they're part of the same organization you are? And so it's almost using that necessary gameplay requirement and still turning that as a means of telling the story, you know? Of like, hey, you play a lot of these video games. Do you ever feel a little bit weird about shooting all these other people, but now you do? Well, why is that? And asking that kind of question. Which it's interesting. And it's something that I think would be, if this did not come out when it did and came out today, I think it would just be as interesting today as it is now.
Oh, for sure.
But I think if you look at it in the context of the time, it's even more interesting that they did this at that time.
Yeah, this was a bold thing to release around that time, especially.
People, I think, are maybe more today willing to look at this a little bit more, but at the time, there was a lot of people. I talked about this on the prep from the last show. There was a particular friend of mine who we had a very falling out over feelings on this because he was not particularly enamored with the portrayal of some of this and could not grasp the point that it was trying to make and the side of the point of view that it was trying to take. One thing about this section as we're moving through here, as the evidence is piling up basically against the 33rd and what they're doing, they even give the quote unquote Splinter faction a little like very generic video game name. They start to refer to them as the Damned at one of a few times, which is a very generic video game name. And you can tell it's almost like, oh, well, maybe it's not everybody. Maybe it's just a couple of them. And they're the Damned.
That was like their squad nickname. They were the 33rd, but even like at the beginning, they said John Conrad's squad, the Damned 33. So that's their like squad name. But
but I took it as also
but when they're
like
talking about them in like a respectable content, they're like, oh, the 33rd. But when as you said, the evidence starts piling up, then they go by their nickname, the Damned.
Yeah. All this is we're getting kind of pushed through the environment here by a radio transmission of a straight up torturing of a CIA agent. By the radio guy, the journalist, is the one broadcasting it, but we're trying to figure out who exactly who is torturing this guy. We're still not sure what's going on here. So that's kind of our driving force of why we're continuing to progress in, because we figure if we can get to that guy, rescue him, maybe find out what he knows, and maybe he can give us more information.
The goalposts keep moving.
Yeah, and what I like is also Walker's the driving force in pushing forward. Everyone else is like, we need to. This is bigger than what we can handle. We're a 3-man Delta Force squad. We need to pull back here, and this is no longer a search and rescue mission. We need to pull back and get evac and get information back out, and let's stop what we're doing here and let's get out of here. And Walker's the one who's just like, no, we're going forward. We're going to keep going forward. We're going to find Conrad. Now we're going to find this CIA agent. With this, we're a few steps away from clarity here.
And it's around this time where Martin is knocked back by sand and is separated from his squad and like falls down a building into the pit section, which I thought was going to be a longer sequence of you separated from your men, but it doesn't last like very long. It's almost an Uncharted-esque sequence too, except you don't have full control, where everything that he's trying to grab onto just ends up throwing him into more glass and everything. He lands on the bottom, and then the thing he was holding onto spirals down and literally stabs the ground right next to him.
It's very Uncharted, and it's a cool video game sequence, but it also has the kind of, to me, I think it has the symbolism too of falling from the skyline of Dubai and the the high rises into the streets. And it's kind of a cool symbolic example of we're now falling into the pit of this, of all of this. You can hide some of this behind the glamour of the penthouses, but now we're on the streets, and we're going to show you there's nothing to hide behind down here. This is where
it's not a slow descent, it's a fast fall.
Yeah, and how quickly you can get wrapped up into this. A lot of interesting gameplay stuff in here. I like a lot.
It tries to do a stealth sequence. It's not good.
The game fiddles with stealth here and there.
It never commits.
But there's no punishment for failing stealth. You just go into combat.
Yeah.
So yeah, those sequences in which you can put your silencer on and shoot some people, and sometimes it's nice to do it that way because it kind of fits the story more. But then there's other sequences, like if you fuck up and you mess it up, you can just fight your way out. There's no fail state that's going to kick in. As we're kind of progressing here, you take the fall. We finally do find a body connected to this CIA agent, and it's just a big elaborate trap. It also is when you're going to start getting to some of the grotesque that this game does start to play with.
The tunnel of bodies, right here.
Well, there's the tunnel of bodies here, but also when it's the pit of bodies here. When you get to the body, when you get to the body that you find that has the radio jammed into its mouth, you're going to start getting into some uncomfortable stuff here. Like it's a lot more like war games talk about the brutality of war, but boy do they just usually show people getting shot from half a mile away, and there's a little bit of blood, and then their body just disappears or just lays there. This is starting to show like the repercussions of this stuff, like the pals of the dead bodies, they're being tortured. People are being hung by ropes. It's the descent of how evil men can be to each other.
There's a term in here I never wanted to hear in my life: sandboarding. Good stuff.
Yeah. I'm not digging super into this stuff, but there's a lot of terms that I learned from several friends of mine who were deployed into Iraq and Afghanistan and places like that, who when they came back and things that they had heard about, luckily none of them have experienced firsthand by any means, but stories that that were being passed around, and the validity of them are questionable sometimes, but they were just the extent of what people are being told, and if you and so hearing some of these terms and stuff like that, it's interesting, having been somebody who's had opportunities to speak to people who are on the ground doing things like the invasion of Iraq and were deployed to Afghanistan and places like that, and you hear like even just being behind some of these events, how these stories filter their way through, because people are people no matter where they are, and what's the first thing people do? They tell people about stuff. I heard this thing that happened over here. Oh, that's bullshit. And then you walk away and you go tell that guy, I heard about this thing that happened over here, So some of these terms are like things that, it's interesting, But it's a horrific sequence, and it's starting to show, one, that there's been a complete and total breakdown.
Yes. And there's even like a point where I'm asking, what's the point here? What are they trying to learn? Does it even matter? Like,
in my mind, they hide behind a lot of rhetoric about maintaining order. You imagine a city in chaos, all the bad things that go along with that, looting, rioting, food shortages, things like that. So, like, I imagine in the justification, and I'm not justifying it, but the justification that they would say is that we're maintaining order and we're hunting down dissidents and people who are causing this chaos, but the methods in which we are doing that are involving things like torture. And then also you add the element of a CIA team that's been sent in that's directly trying to undercut them. Where now we got to torture people to find out about this CIA team. You start to justify the evils in your head because, and you even see some of their arguments. Like, that's something I'll get into in the next couple of chapters here. But like the 33rd starts to make arguments about like, we're doing this for the good of all of Dubai. Like, yeah, we're torturing people over here, but like in a sequence in which we're about to get to, like the guy straight up like, we're helping them. Like, what did you do? You did this. This wasn't on us. Like, I didn't do this. There's a lot of conversations like that starting to happen. Well, at this point, Walker and his team, yes, they're killing Americans, but they're also killing Americans who are fighting them. Everything's kind of, they're still in the more justified area here. And we're starting to get into a situation where it's like, well, how are you going to continue this descent and still maintain your moral compass? Because it's almost impossible. Is where you're going, Walker. You're not going to be able to maintain your moral compass. This is not a road that leads anywhere that you can be, good on. We're introduced at the ambush at this the CIA agent's location that we were tracking by the 33rd, but then rescued by another CIA agent.
Gould, who
Gould.
appears basically as soon as he's name dropped by the radio man. He's like, or whoever's there, because he's like, we want Gould, and they're like, we never heard of Gould, and then Gould saves you.
Yeah, and then it's another really good like video games like swerve of a trope, right? He shows up. We just played Resident Evil 4.
Yeah.
He plays the Ada role of showing up and saving you as Leon, right? Well, he does the same thing here. He saves you from this deadly ambush. He gives you intelligence to get you out of this museum, which was a really good fight in the museum. There's a good sequence in which you get chased by an attack helicopter.
That's playing classical music.
Yeah, it's not even playing it. The radio man is doing the da 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 da. Yeah, which is also something straight up because they do the Flight of the Bumblebee.
Valkyries.
Flight of the Valkyries at the beginning of Apocalypse Now. There was a sequence in which they're coming in. Yeah, it's the Flight of the Valkyries. It's the whole sequence that ends with I love the smell of napalm in the morning. So it's a straight up reference to that. But like, it's a good combat sequence here. But you would think, okay, well, maybe this is going to be a main character that's going to help me understand and give me direction going forward. And after we're seeing that he's in a firefight with the 33rd, we go push to try to get to his location. He's leading a bunch of members of the populace of Dubai in what is, Walker and I want to say, who makes the statement here? Is it Lugo? It might be. Well, he makes a statement he's leading a whole group of civilians, like the armed civilians, against professional soldiers. He led them to slaughter. Like, when you're down in those trenches, he's like, this was a failed fucking op to attack this gate. Like, what was he hoping he was going to accomplish here? Because they never stood a chance.
Is this where...
So even little stuff...
Is this where Walker says maybe the loss was worth the gain? Is that what he's referring to here?
Yeah. Well, he's like, well, maybe it was that important to get to this location, the gate, that he was willing to throw away all these people's lives. But, of course, when we find him, he's already been captured.
Yeah, because this is the bit where you get the first bit of white phosphorus stuff as we're at the gate. And that's why it was haunting a little bit, but I was like, this is the famous white phosphorus scene? This is overall pretty... Yeah. Did I jump ahead?
A couple of things I want to talk about.
I did.
No, I jumped ahead too fast.
Okay, gotcha.
Fight in the museum leads out of the aquarium. We're getting guided by Gold. This is the sequence. Yeah, well, as we come out, we get the sequence in which we've seen that they're hanging bodies
over the light posts.
They're hanging people all the light posts, and there's this really kind of haunting scene as you walk out into the daylight that there's just bodies hanging everywhere. And that's when you get the initial introduction of what white phosphorus does, and you get it from a close range point of view, where he basically all these guys who are attacking the gate get hit with it, and you just see how devastating it is, that it just eviscerates anybody who's inside range of it, and they're just screaming and burning, and you're having to kind of like sidestep them as they're crawling towards you.
Because Walker says, "Don't touch them."
Yeah,
Don't come in
because
contact.
they're on fire, and they're trying to get help. And then there's a firefight inside the remnants of the white phosphorus as the 33rd is coming through the smoke, executing people. And there's a firefight there. Some of the lighting effects and the particle effects this game does is so damn effective.
Yeah, absolutely. But I was like, this is the famous white phosphorus scene. I was like, it's tense, but I was expecting something a little more. Oh man,
it's kind of good that it kind of changed your expectations.
It did.
You're like,
because
well,
that was
not that.
all
bad.
that build up for this. All right, whatever. So when the real one comes about, I was not ready for that.
Yeah, it's actually kind of good that it was still able to catch you.
Yeah.
We find that gold's been captured. We're given multiple options here.
A choice, quote unquote.
Yeah, you can go with the option to save him, which is going to lead to the execution of some of the civilians he was with. And there's a brutal interrogation sequence here. In which they're shooting civilians in front of him to try to get him to talk. And they hold down a woman and basically full auto bullets right beside her head, like moving it closer to her head to try to get him to talk. Not a lot of video games like do torture sequences like that. There's not a lot of like, even in war games like Metal Gear, like it's a machine that electrocutes you. There's not like the brutality of it that this game does, of like the concept that they're just walking down and shooting people in the head. You gonna tell us what you want to know? Bam.
There's a
okay, I'll
couple
shoot your next friend.
Games at the top of my head I can think of that do interrogation and torture scenes like in a violent way. The first one is like Splinter Cell Conviction, even though
that's a good choice.
Because those are ones that you're actively participating in, and the second one, even though the point of it is to showcase how gruesome and terrifying Caesar is in a game that's otherwise moderately humorous. Grand Theft Auto 5 has a infamous like torture sequence. I don't know if you played that.
I know what it is. That's when you're like electrocuting the guy with a car battery.
Yeah.
Don't you like cut up? Yeah. I would say one thing though about those is you usually in those sequences it's showing how brutal it is from you as the person doing the torturing.
Yeah.
Here, by making you a third party that's having to watch, it kind of takes away the power, right?
Especially if
even a conviction.
Sorry, but especially if you choose, like I did, to save the civilians, you're choosing not to intervene, which makes
that's
you
why
feel
I did too.
Bad, yeah.
Yeah, I went to save the civilians, and Gold, they kill him.
They have guns. They choke him out.
Yeah, it's not even. Yeah, it's even worse than shooting him.
Yeah,
like it's so personal and unnecessarily brutal. And one of the things that is Lugo, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the things that he says is he's like, "This is on you."
I can take
he's
the
the
shot.
one advocating. He's the one advocating for saving him. He's like, and Adams is the one who's like, no, those civilians down there, we can get them too. This is a rescue mission. Remember, we have to, do something about that. And yeah, that realization of when Lugo's right, they do kill them. He's just straight up like, this is on you. We could have done something here. We could have saved him. And the fact that it is so brutal and personal of choking him to death. It's nasty, and you do end up rescuing a couple of civilians, but
what's to gain? Because where are they gonna go? They have no means to get out. They're walking off into the section where there was a whole bunch of guards. We don't know how long we saved them for. But at the same time, it's like this game throws out, and from this section on, it's throwing out a kind of a bit of trolley problems at you of what's the most ethical solution. Both suck, but what you're playing in your head, what's the most ethical? And every single time that, at least so far in the game, it throws it at you, it's always like, oh, it ends bad anyway.
Well, and one thing here is, like, this is the solution for those of us who want to feel better about ourselves.
Yeah, exactly. We can pat ourselves on the back going, we saved 2 people for like 10 minutes, probably.
I saved 2 civilians, but I don't remember. Apparently, last time I played this, because I was looking at my old achievements, I did not save the civilians. Last time I saved him.
I reloaded my save because I tried to see if I could have it both ways. I tried to see if I could. I did the sneak down to where I followed Adams down so we could, like, where we watched the torture sequence, and then I put on the silencer and tried to silently take out them. But it ultimately just turns into a firefight anyway, and they're like, I guess we're taking the shot. So then I reloaded. So then I reloaded, yeah. So I was trying to see if I could have it both ways, but I couldn't.
Yeah.
I tried the same thing with another choice coming up. I tried to, even though that one kind of lets you do it, but it's not to a satisfying result.
I know which one you're saying.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's the solution that makes you feel better about yourself, but you didn't actually gain anything. You probably could have gained something better if you would have actually saved gold, but maybe not.
How many people could you have saved if you did save gold? Would it equate to more than 2 people? Would that make that the more just choice than saving 2 civilians?
And to be honest with you, it's almost better to not know.
Yeah.
You know, but it is like I said, we did both take the choice that makes us feel better about ourselves, but is it the actual right choice? Debatable. This leads to chapter 8. This is the water cooler moment. I remember playing this moment and being a slow realization for me, because it was something I did not anticipate happening. You come out over basically the largest grouping of the 33rd that we've come across. We are going to basically go investigate the gate here that the CIA were launching their attack against. We figure that if it was important enough for him to risk it all for, then it's got to be something we got to do.
Yeah.
This
must be where they're hold up. This is their fortress. This is where they're assembling.
This is where we're going to end it.
Yeah.
We're going to end this here. It's the action hero moment, right? Damn it, these guys are bastards. Look what they're doing. So let's end it here. We're going to be the heroes. And we get the perfect situation. They're all pinned up in a small location, and we have access to this devastating weapon that we've already been shown what it'll do with white phosphorus, and we have them. They're sitting ducks. There's pushback. Lugo in particular is like, that's white phosphorus, man. We can't use this. But then Walker's point of view is they gave up that right to not, they're the enemy and they've done these horrible things. We're going to fight fire with fire, quite literally.
They've used it so we can use it. The eye for an eye, the ends justify the means kind of way.
Yes. They're not innocent. We're judge, jury, and executioner here. And this sequence is so clinical.
It plays out like the AC-130 missions in a Call of Duty, where you're so far away, so far removed. Everything's in a computer scanning mode where you're looking at them through night vision. But yet it still feels... But the context of what you're doing to these men, presumably just these men.
And what I find...
Yeah.
No, you're right. You're right. It's so, for me, it does a great job because, one, you have the reflection of your own face in the screen.
Yes.
That you're watching. 2, it is very clinical. They're all little blobs on the screen, and you're just hitting targets. And when you hit the targets, they disappear, and it doesn't look bad from that point of view. it is very accurate to the way like the AC-130 mission in Call of Duty 4 was. If you've ever seen footage of like the AC-130 missions in reality, it is hard to put two and two together that what just happened is someone died, because it's so far away, it's so disconnected.
They don't look like humans or literally blobs or dots on a screen.
Exactly, that's what like you see like drone strike footage.
You can't
it's
equate
just like a car.
You can't equate something like the size of a nickel to like a human life.
Exactly. And the game does it, and at first the game is pulling you along, because as you're dropping the strikes, you're moving up the corridor of the base there, and you're just seeing increasing numbers of dots. And when you get to the end, those combat troops on top of a bridge shooting at you from a Humvee, and there's what looks to be a whole mess of troops in the trenches down there. So you hit that because you've been hitting every other target on your way there. And so you've successfully wiped out the 33rd's entire like defensive base here at the gate, and you have your what you believe to be the kick in the gut moment as you descend down into the base, because you're now walking through the remnants of all this white phosphorus that you've dropped on all these people. And it's brutal. Like, they're dying, they're choking in the smoke. There's people calling from the buildings. They're all stuck and trapped. And, like, guys are like, we need to do something. And Walker's like, they made their choice. And, you see that justification that Walker makes all the time. They made their choice. They brought this upon themselves.
I have a quote here. We will make them pay for what they've done. And I'm like, I think we've done worse at this point.
Well, and you get to the end, right? And like you have that moment where the guy, there's a soldier down at the end of the base there whose face is burned, and he walks up. He goes, "Why?" Like, the guy goes, "Why?" And Walker goes, you brought this on yourself. Like, this all more justification. It's the, 100% morally right feelings of you brought this upon yourself. I am the righteous hand of God.
But then,
it's
he
literally
says,
that.
No, we were helping.
And you turn to the right, and you realize that large blob of personnel that were in those trenches, you firebombed all of the civilians that they had evacuated from that bank.
Yep.
They all were down in those trenches. So when you were in your righteous hand of God striking down the enemy with your white phosphorus, the only thing you did is proceeded to bomb yourself through, all of them, and then proceeded to bomb what appears to be at least several hundred civilians in this horrible weapon that burns and kills people in a horrific way. And a lesser game would have been the final act moment.
This was even though it's not a gameplay sequence, it's a completely different game. There's something similar. I won't spoil it here, but there's something kind of similar that happens in like LA Noire. There's a moment like that where it doesn't feel good and it changes a perspective on something that you did, but it's a cutscene and it's a very different type of game, so I don't know, but it's comparable, but I don't think it makes that necessarily a lesser game for it. I just found I just found the connection. There's the connection there, obviously.
No, but you're 100% right. That is a good sequence in LA Noire.
Yeah, because it serves that story well, too. And this is where I went down a Google rabbit hole, and I found out that using white phosphorus is not a war crime, technically.
White phosphorus is technically considered like an illumination device. Like a tracer round, which are used, we use tracer rounds. Mm-hmm. Is white phosphorus tipped. So, and it's done like that, so when you shoot it, you can see it go through the air, and that's how you use a tracer. But let's say theoretically, and tracers are supposed to be there to mark targets for other people, but you hit somebody with that tracer round, now that not only are they shot, but they're shot with a bullet that's on fire or burning. Yeah. White phosphorus, people believe that white phosphorus was banned when they stopped using napalm after Vietnam. But white phosphorus is still valid, under Geneva Convention rules, you can still use white phosphorus.
That's what shocked me. I was like, are you kidding? Because they're like, oh, it's not technically chemical warfare. I'm like, not to go in a huge rabbit hole here, but that just led me giving a distressed sigh and be like, everything sucks. All right, let's keep going.
Well, the reason why they banned napalm was because napalm is a jelly. And so when napalm hits and it spreads, the jelly gets on you and continues to burn.
Mm-hmm.
And that was labeled as a war crime because it's it's the same reason why we don't use flamethrowers anymore, because that's just liquid napalm. But white phosphorus doesn't technically work like that, so it's still considered like a valid, but it still does a similar thing, and not counting the fact that it ignites the air. So if it doesn't burn you, it might burn your lungs out and stuff like that. Like, all of this is, and the craziest thing is, and one thing that's this game does a good job of, and I hope that, because video games reach people differently than films and books
for sure,
and stuff like that, or documentaries and stuff like that, is maybe show people that, what this cool sequence in a movie where they fly in to save the good guys and bomb the bad guys with this explosive force that comes burning up in the air. That's also doing horrifically horrible things, and for every time that might hit a group of quote-unquote bad guys, there's also been times when that's hit the building next door and lit a bunch of civilians up that were in there hiding. Like, this is not this is not something quote-unquote cool. There's real life repercussions to these kind of weapons and these kind of systems. And this is a fascinating look, really in-depth look at the repercussions of something as simple as this.
Yeah. And story-wise, just like just after this moment, all of a sudden we are the bad guys at this point, because now the soldiers shooting at you are like, they killed civilians.
There's a great sequence in which Lugo is like, you made us murderers, because he's the one who was objecting, and he objected, and give him credit. Like, it's very easy to hate him because he's the guy who's always undercutting our hero, right? And there's a sequence when she gets punched out, and you almost are supposed to feel like satisfied when Adams punches him out, they have their like big spat.
Yeah.
But it's like, he's got a point. Like, he did tell you, I don't want to do this. I don't want to use this. And you made him do it, and now he's got to live with, like, we're looking at it from Walker's point of view, that Walker's now got to live with what he just did. But so does this guy who was the whole time being like, unless this is a direct order, I'm not doing it. And now he, that line just really stuck out to me. That line was like, he made us murderers. Like, I've lost my more high ground here. I just murdered people. And especially because he's the guy firing the rounds.
Yeah.
If you think about that too, because if you listen to the dialogue, he's the one actually hanging the rounds. So technically, Walker marked the targets. Lugo's the one who actually shot it. And so the man who didn't want to do it is the one who now has to live with the fact that he just murdered a large number of civilians. It's a really interesting line, and you're right. The enemy starting to yell things at you like, they just firebombed civilians, like, you bastards, and they're screaming stuff at you in like righteous, indignant, stuff, but like, you fuckers just killed all these people, and I'm gonna kill you. And what I talked about before, but I really, really thought was effective, is how the dialogue of the battles start to change here. Where Walker's like, they're no longer referring to things in like military terms, they're just yelling at it, like, I got the fucker, and stuff like that, where it's just brutal, and everyone is starting to unravel. The vague ability to wrap situations in justification, to wrap the killing of someone in a justification, is breaking down. and now we're just murdering each other in the desert.
That's literally my note here. I was like, there's no justifying anyone's actions at this point. No one is clean coming out of this.
No, because like, look, because Walker doesn't walk away. He's standing in the repercussions of his decisions. He's staring at a woman holding her child that he just firebombed, and he still doesn't walk away. He's like, no, now we have to finish this, and it's that brutal. No, like I said, all more justifications are gone on all sides, and we're just killing each other in the desert now.
And this is at the point too where the loading screens are shifting to like more horrific, beautifully drawn horrific imagery. And it's at this point I said, I feel like there's people out there who unironically have some of these loading screens as their wallpaper because they're really nice looking.
As a person who played this with a bunch of other people who played it at the same time, there were some people who completely all of this was lost on them.
What? How do you miss the point? This game for as great as it is, it's as subtle as taking a wrecking ball to a house and then dropping white phosphorus on it.
Yeah, by choosing to not want to recognize it, like. The human beings have the amazing ability to justify almost anything to themselves, and there was people that I knew who played this who were way too damn old and had too much life experience to not being able to recognize any of this stuff. Like I said, it is not subtle. This is not subtle at all, but there were still people who were like, I don't think you. No, anyways. It's this. It's not that deep. It's not trying to reference that.
It's not that deep. Jeez.
These are the same people who, when you talk about like the end of World War II and the dropping of the atomic bombs and things like that, very flippantly say like, "Well, we were the good guys. That's how that went." Yada yada, and they cannot understand any other viewpoint. Other than, well, we won. That's how we won. It's like, well, do you understand that just because the outcome is what you wanted, the means don't always justify the ends, and there's more complexity here than just that. Like, even if you still agree with the ending, you still need to justify. You need to understand the complexities that go into this. And those other people that life is about black and white, and the concept that there's any gray in the world is unacceptable, because if I accept that there's gray in the world, my hardcore fundamental beliefs are no longer valid or no longer safe. So yeah, that's Eric's rant of the day.
I also have a note here that says, "Dear NSA, these are notes for a video game podcast, I promise," because I talk about bombing civilians on a note and white phosphorus. So I'm like, hey, if you're a government organization who scans things, if you're reading my notes, I promise I have one point here.
Yeah. That's probably not a bad idea. You launch your attack on the gate, big combat sequence. I talked about how the vibes are changing. And once you're inside the gate there, you have you come across 5 bodies in chairs that have been burned to death. And there's the last hope of Walker. His beliefs is like, well, wonder why did they do this? This is Conrad's command squad, basically his leadership. They must have launched a coup or something like that. And then you actually start to have your very first conversation between Walker and Conrad, and all of Walker's ability to try to justify what's happening here goes out the window, because Conrad just straight up admits that he's the one doing this. There's no hero to rescue here. Conrad's like, I'm doing what's necessary. Don't sit there from your point of view and tell me that I'm wrong. I know, A, what you just did,
Yeah.
And B, an example had to be made of these men. Tough decisions are being made, and I could not run the risk of them undercutting these decisions. So I made an example, and I completely stand behind that. Like, there's not a sense of any doubt in him.
Yeah, but what's interesting is Walker says, "Oh, the radio man is the laggy, and Conrad is running the show," and the possibilities are narrowing. But even I'm completely Walker's been wrong about everything in this game. That even though the possibilities are narrowing in, I'm still like, I can't trust anything my character is saying because he's been wrong at every single turn of this game. So I don't know what's going on at this point. And that's exciting.
Yeah.
But also
I'm not going to spoil
anxiety inducing.
Yeah, I'm not going to spoil anything for you here because that's what makes it so interesting, right? Like that realization that even if the truth was given to you on a silver platter, are you able to accept it anymore because everything else has been a lie?
Yeah.
Or you've been wrong about everything else. So even if the truth is being told to you 150% true, are you willing to accept it? And Walker is now walking a line, like he's descending into his decisions here. Is he able to accept it? I mean,
he even walk away from this when this is over?
He's been given plenty of opportunities. He could have walked away after the firebombing, but he didn't. He's been given at this point about 2 to 3 moments that he could have walked away and realized, this is fucked. I need to get out of here, get this information out, and we need to do something, get a response in here and do something. But every time he continues down that path, because it's starting to become an obsession almost. I have to see this through.
Yeah.
I have to punish them. I have to get to Conrad. It's obsession.
It went from a rescue mission to a revenge story. Really quickly.
But then also, if you're looking at what you're doing, as we get the sequence in which Conrad straight up says, gentlemen, welcome to Dubai. And you come out in chapter 9 on the roads outside of Dubai. And Conrad's going to teach us a lesson about how things are going here. And as we approach, those 2 men hanging from a bridge. One's a man who was caught stealing water. There's rations of supplies and things like that right here. And the other one was a soldier who was a part of the team that was sent to get this man and capture him. But in the process, things went bad and killed 5 of that man's family. They're both being hanging from the bridge here. And basically Conrad goes, you're going to make a choice here about who walks away, or you're surrounded, so pick. I'm going to teach you what it's like to make these decisions. Pick who you're going to kill.
It's another trolley problem.
Yep. Now, how did you play this?
I attacked the snipers.
How did that work for you?
They both died.
You can also wait, and they'll both die. The decision would be poured from you, basically.
Yeah.
This time I decided to play along because I thought that you probably wouldn't play along.
I'm like, no, I'm not doing this. Even though they still died, it's like I'm as the player holding on to. Well, I didn't do this. I tried to save them. Is that enough? But I could have saved one by killing one. So what does that mean?
I shot the soldier who had killed the 5 members of the man's family.
Yeah.
Because I did the mental gymnastics of saying that one was stealing out of
necessity.
Necessity is theft a capital crime, and this, that, and the other. And he does survive. So I saved one.
Huh. So and I saved none trying to do the moral thing.
You have it goes back to that question I asked you about the saving the civilians, right? You feel better about yourself because you didn't pull the trigger, but both of them died. I pulled the trigger and one of them lived. And that's something that the game is, like I said, it's all the trolley problem, yeah, but it does a good job of making you think about that. Like, okay, you feel better about yourself, but no one lived. At least, if you would have made the bad call, you would have tainted your own soul. But somebody walked away from this and got to live another day. So it's an interesting conundrum that leads to a large fight sequence that leads to a very cool sequence when the storm comes in and you fight your way through the storm because it's that visibility thing. And it's so cool to be like within 5 or 6 feet of other people and you both can't see each other and kind of stumbling up onto each other. Like you're pushing through the sand and then you round the corner and there's a guy facing you. You would have seen each other in normal situations, but here you're just close, within 2 or 3 feet, and it's just that last second, and moving through. It's a really cool sequence.
Yeah, for sure.
That
just how it starts out as a firefight and like clear, and then it descends into the storm completely taking over and your visibility going down. It's a really cool fight.
Leads to you taking cover in one of the like a container. It looks like
a concrete tube thing.
Yeah, and as you take cover in there, you have that last like little conversation with Conrad, where you're like, I just want you to know that I'm coming for you. Like, it's that continued obsession of walkers can't walk away.
It's
like,
a good.
He's just fully committed.
It's actually a good cliffhanger here.
Yeah. How are you feeling about this game?
I'm excited, if that's the right word, to play the rest of this, because it has my full attention. Like,
it's not an enjoyable game to play necessarily.
Oh no!
But it is a game that is engaging.
And engaging's the right word. And I'm constantly battling with myself that I wish I liked the gameplay more. But I'm like, if the gameplay was too fun, would that make the game completely miss the point? Because if I'm enjoying the combat, then am I missing? It's like I heard this situation talked about with like The Last of Us 2, where the combat is supposedly incredible, but the story is like dour. Revenge is not the path forward. But man, do they make that revenge really fun to play. And how does that take away from the story? So if this game was better playing, would it take away from the story this game's trying to tell? And I've been wrestling that with my head, and I don't even have a clear answer.
There's a lot of like weird stuff here because there is a multiplayer mode.
There's free co-op survival DLC. And I thought about downloading that and be like, we should play that just to see what
I would be willing to play it. I do remember
I tried to do a quick match to see if people were online on this game.
I doubt they are.
No.
I did play the multiplayer because I played this when it came out. And it was very like Gears of War style, like team deathmatch kind of thing. And I remember there was a lot of the maps had stuff based around like shooting out stuff so sand could bury people.
Okay, that's
like environmental kills.
That's interesting.
And it's extremely disconnected.
Oh, for sure.
From
that was
what it's doing in the campaign.
We talked about this last time, but that was outsourced to the developers of BioShock 2's multiplayer. Which they are apparently the kings of unnecessary multiplayer modes.
Yeah.
But somehow making them still fun.
Like I said, I don't remember it being bad.
Yeah.
It was passable, but it's not what this game was trying to do. And, there's been... I remember reading an article when Battlefield 1 came out.
Yeah.
And it was a Kotaku article, so take it for what you will. Where someone was so they were complaining about the disconnect between the little sequences in Battlefield 1's little story content connected to the main multiplayer content, how Battlefield is over the top, and then there's these stories trying to teach like the historic battles of the Ardennes forest or something.
Yeah.
And I remember saying, but yeah, you're there for Battlefield though 90% for the multiplayer though. So they did this really good little single player content for a couple hours worth of content, but it's a multiplayer focused game, so that's kind of why that disconnect doesn't affect me.
And that single player mode is super interesting too, because it is each story in that has a very radically different tone. It starts out very dour, but then there's moments of like flying biplanes with a unreliable narrator.
Yeah, I also remember reading that article and calling into question that yes, there is dire tones. They really, it's just the initial sequence in which you are playing as multiple people getting killed, and it just lists dates of their life.
Yeah.
And every time they die, you just switch to another person. And it was like, yes, that's dire, but the rest of this is not nearly as like grounded in the historic crisis of what World War One was. And I just remember sitting there, and the only thing that kept popping through my head is like, if you wanted to make this argument, instead of trying to make this argument about Battlefield 1, you should have made that argument about Spec Ops The Line.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, I was sitting there, and like, I remember just, it's a Kotaku article, so take it for what you will. And just thinking, like, if you want to make this argument, you really just fucked up putting tying you to the horse of Battlefield 1 when you should have just tied it to the horse of Spec Ops The Line, and then your argument holds 150%, because then you're like, look at this game that's trying to tell you something, and then there's a multiplayer when you run around and you can unlock skins. Like, yeah, I remember reading that article and it's like, this is a dumb fucking article unless you would have switched it to something like Spec Ops The Line, where it's like, look at the disconnect here. Instead
Good
of
argument, bad example to support, bad evidence to support.
Crappy journalism. I have a bone to pick with Kotaku. They have good content, and then they have bad content, and there is no middle ground.
The Jason Schreier era was the peak era of that. But yeah, I'm getting way in the weeds here.
No, yeah, we are, but we're bringing it home. But yeah, you are right though. He had that thing moving for a while.
Recommend his books. Read his books. They're good books.
I read one of the books. I actually think I have to give it back to you still. That just dawned on me. I think I still have it. What was I about to say? Yes. Finishing the game. Next time we will finish this game.
Yes.
For the next show. I am fascinated to see how that works out. I'm not going to get into that at all. We'll just get there when we get there. State of the Save at State of the Save on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter. stateofthesave@gmail.com for your emails. State of the Save on YouTube for streaming content with Michael. You can watch Michael struggle through Legend of Zelda randomized. Also occasionally on Twitch. As always, thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time. Stay safe out there.